You are listening to the Makers Church podcast. For more information about our community, please visit makerschurch.org.
Man, like Derek said, I am so honored to be able to preach on the last Sunday of the decade. My name is Shalise, and I'm one of the pastors here if we haven't met. But it really is an honor. I was just reflecting on it this morning. Like, it is not normal in most churches to have like a shared stage. Usually you have one pastor and they preach until they, need a break, and then somebody else comes in. And I just wanted to honor Pastor Derek for just allowing space for myself, for Mark, for other speakers to come and to share, because I think that God uses all of us in unique ways, and I've had something burning in my heart, and I didn't know when I was going to be able to share it. I didn't know if it was going to be next year, and so thank you for giving me the space today to share with you guys. Let's give it up for Pastor Derek. I mean, gosh, what amazing leader you are. Whew, 2019, can we talk about it? Man, just like the holiday season, you're like December, oh my gosh, so many things. We have been incredibly blessed. My husband and I, Drew, our family, like some amazing, incredible things have happened in 2019. I think back even to just since like Thanksgiving. We got to go on an incredible vacation to Mexico City with some of our dearest friends. We went out to the desert for Christmas with my family. Nobody died, nobody killed each other, so we're all good. That is like a victory. We all still talk and love each other. And, I went and saw The Grinch at the Old Globe, which I just absolutely loved. We also went to the Holiday Bowl, and I saw USC be defeated by Iowa, and it was really sad. I don't want to talk about it anymore. But we've had a lot of fun. And the holidays always feel, to me, like everything is just amped up to the next level. I mean, not to mention you have like this epic soundtrack. Dun, 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 dun. I'm walking into Target like, yes, buy everything, I get it. But my emotions are always kind of ramped up around the holidays. We've had some incredibly high highs, and to be honest, some incredibly low lows. I'm sure some of you have heard of Kaylee Hagenthal. She's a worship leader up at Bethel. And they announced a few weeks ago that their 2-year-old daughter had unexpectedly died. And it hit me so deep. I know that like tragedies happen every day, but there was something about this one that I just couldn't like reconcile with. I couldn't really shake it. And I'm, shopping in Target and just finding myself like overcome with this like strong, intense feelings of just sadness and grief. And then yesterday I was on Instagram and Holly Ann posted about another mom whose child unexpectedly passed away. And I was like, God, like I know that this stuff happens all the time, but for whatever reason, like especially during the Christmas season, I think for those of us who are noticing suffering, it just becomes all the more amplified. See, I've been wrestling with my own thoughts surrounding kind of this like life and death. And I kind of made a point this year not to just like brush over it, not to busy myself with all the things that were happening, but to really like allow myself to feel it and to sit in it. Because I think when we allow ourselves to experience sorrow and grief and the full weight of it, it allows us to become so much more appreciative for the life that we have, for the life that I get to share with all of you, and for all of your lives that I get to be a part of. See, this is usually the time of the year when we reflect on what has passed and on what is to come. And I think just like the cycle of seasons and the year, life also kind of follows the same pattern. See, we have moments of valleys, and then we have these peaks. And life kind of ebbs and flows in that same way. We can have really high highs and really low lows. But there were some incredible highs. One of my all-time favorite moments from this holiday season was my sister-in-law and brother-in-law announced that they were pregnant and that they were going to have a baby. And I was so incredibly excited for them, mainly because I called it. I knew it. I love finding that stuff out. But we're sitting there with, it's just her and her husband and Drew and I, and we're sitting there. And I was like, hey, what did you get your dad for Christmas? I mean, Randy is a hard man to shop for, And I'm like, what did you get your dad for Christmas? And she goes, well, it's kind of like a group gift for everybody. And I was like, oh, so you're pregnant? And she was like, no. And then like really quickly got up and left the room with her husband. And so they walk out of the room and I turned to Drew and I'm like, she's pregnant. And she comes back out and she gives us these mugs that say promoted to auntie and promoted to uncle. And I was like, I knew it. I was like, yes, I'm also excited for you, but I win. I love being right. So we were really excited celebrating this new life that was going to be coming into the world, and also celebrating the last Christmas that Drew and I will ever get presents. Because now that there is a baby, like, we don't matter anymore. His parents are never going to think about us again. That child will get every single thing. And I was overcome with such genuine, real joy as I was sitting in the bathroom crying an hour later. Because see, it was just a year earlier that Drew and I had told his family that we were gonna start trying for a family. And so I'm sitting there like, so excited for you, but I know that there's all these other things that, and it doesn't even matter why it hasn't happened, and I know about God's timing, and I know that there's so much that goes into it, but I could just feel the weight of like disappointment and failure. And I'm sitting there and I just felt this like grief pushing up against my faith. And I had this like real, genuine, strong faith and trust in a God whose timing is perfect. And this real, honest, genuine grief of unmet expectations occupying the same space. And I know we've all been there. Right? We've all been in those moments, those dichotomous moments where these two things shouldn't be able to exist in the same space because we feel two totally different things at the same time. Unmet expectation and incredible, surprising hope. And I'm sitting there on the bathroom floor having my moment, and this verse pops to my mind. And I'm like, that is such a weird verse to think of right now in this moment. And I'm like, Amos, who even knows, like nobody reads Amos. Like, why is this verse popping into my mind? It wasn't like, trust in the Lord with all your heart. You know, it was like Amos 7:14. I am not a prophet, nor am I the son of a prophet, but I am a herdsman plucking wild figs. I'm like, that is so random. I'm not a prophet, I'm not the son of a prophet, but I'm a herdsman plucking wild figs. See, a few weeks ago, I was teaching my students. I'm a high school English teacher. And I was going through an excerpt from Thomas Merton's No Man is an Island with them. And in this excerpt, Merton like casually mentions this verse. And I don't know if you've ever read anything and all of a sudden it just like jumps out at the page at you. But that phrase, plucking wild figs, like wild figs, it was like it jumped off the page at me. And I'm thinking about this verse as I'm sitting on the bathroom floor and I'm like, I'm not a prophet nor a son of a prophet. I'm just a herdsman, just a shepherd plucking wild figs. But I was very confused because Amos was a prophet. Not only was he a prophet, he was the first prophet to have a book of the Bible in that order, like named after him. And so I'm like, wait, but he was a prophet. And I was very confused because I'm like, well, he's not a prophet, but is a prophet. And I was like, oh, confusion, the story of my life right now. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And I started thinking about this fact that Amos did not identify with this calling that like God had given him that seemed to be the more important thing. Amos was identifying with who he was at his core. He said that he wasn't the son of a prophet. He didn't grow up in the ministry or wanting to be used by God. He was just a herdsman who was doing his job. But Amos, as an ordinary shepherd, cared deeply about justice. And when you read Amos, this is in Amos 7. The first 6 chapters is all about Amos calling out the people of Israel because of all of the unjust deeds that they were doing. And he was trying to hold them accountable through these prophecies. He was allowing God to speak through him to tell these people it was not okay the way that they were treating the poor. It was not okay that they were selling people to pay for their own needs. So this is not okay that they were using their privilege as an excuse to not love their neighbors. It was not okay that they were only looking out for their own interests. And so we get to Amos 7, and Amos has this encounter with a priest, and the priest basically tells him, take your prophecies and go home. He's like, we don't want to hear it anymore. We already know deep down how we have not met the expectations that God has set for us, and now you are bringing to light all of these expectations that we have not met. And nobody likes that person. Nobody likes the person that holds up a mirror to you and confronts you with all your selfishness. And so Amos is sitting there and he's being just attacked by the king and by this high priest. And he says to them, I am not a prophet. I'm not a son of a prophet. I'm just a herdsman collecting wild figs. And so today what I want to talk about is this idea of unmet expectations. We see it even in this moment as Amos is trying to defend himself. He didn't even know how God was going to use him. He didn't know what to expect from this experience. He probably expected people to receive him, and the church rejected him. And so we're going to talk about unmet expectations. And I know that all of you here have experienced that. I mean, it's the holidays. Like, there's no better time to talk about things not going the way that you had planned, except when they're the holidays. For me and my family, unmet expectations for me especially a lot of times come when we're playing games. We are like a gaming family. Like, number one priority for me, at least when we're on family vacation, is how many games can we play? I got a new game this year called I Dissent. And it's based off of like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And basically the gist of it is you get a topic card and then everybody argues their opinion. And then you vote, and whoever has like the majority wins. Super great game to play with your family, who all have like very differing opinions. And some topics are really sweet, you know, like a hot dog is a sandwich. And I'm like, no, false. And my brother-in-law Tucker goes, no, a hot dog is a weird taco. And I was like, it is a weird taco. That's right, you know. And then there are other cards that we start pulling, like ghosts are real. And you're like, ooh, okay, well, define ghost. So my dad's like, ghosts aren't real. I was like, oh, the Holy Ghost, Dad? So we don't believe in the Holy, okay. And then we got to the fun one. Aliens have visited this planet. And that's when the fun really began. I was like, go on, sisters, let's talk about this. And we're sitting there having these conversations, and you think you know your family, and then all of a sudden you start talking about aliens and ghosts and hot dogs, and you're getting really honest and truthful with everyone, and that can be very, very dangerous. See, like if I find out that Pastor Mark thinks pets are like a waste of time and money, I can unfriend him, you know? But like when my dad starts talking about the time that he saw a UFO, I'm like, okay, old man, all right. But like I can't go anywhere. You know, this is my family. And what do you do when you realize suddenly that you see the world very differently from some people that are even the closest to you? Or that you have different desires and priorities and expectations? See, I find comfort in the fact that even Jesus had unmet expectations. We look in Mark 14. And Jesus is invited, they've gone to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's asked his disciples to come with him. This is right before he's going to be taken to be crucified. And he says, they went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. So my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He said to them, stay here and keep watch. Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It says, once more he went away and prayed the same thing. And when he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. Oh, poor babies. My eyes are heavy. It says they didn't know what to say to him. Sorry. And then returning the third time, he said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Enough. The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. See, Jesus had expectations of his disciples, that they could at least see the depth of his sorrow and anguish, and at least for a moment, for an hour, to be in it with him. But it says that they were tired. They were short-sighted. Ultimately, they couldn't see the bigger picture of what was happening in that moment. And I can't imagine how frustrating that moment must have been for Jesus. See, Jesus knew what was coming. He knew what was at stake. But his disciples didn't have a big enough perspective of that moment to fully see what was happening. See, it's often our perspective that informs our actions. And they couldn't see it. They didn't have the eyes to see what was happening. And I wonder if they had known that that was the time. I know that Jesus had kind of like hinted at it, but if they had really known this is the last time before he goes to his death, that we're going to be with him alone, if they would have done something differently. I wonder if they thought back on that moment days later with regret, thinking, man, if I had just stayed with him, if I could have just put off sleep for 1 hour more. See, they couldn't see it. All they were aware of was their own needs and their own desires. And when I read this story, I wonder how often do I not see it? Like how often do I miss this opportunity that God has put in front of me, this bigger moment, because I don't have eyes and perspective to see what he is actually doing. And I think this is why Jesus calls us as a church and as a people to spiritual disciplines. Disciplines like prayer and silence and meditation are moments for us to recalibrate, to pause, to get a bigger perspective, to reflect, to think back, even if it's just for a moment. It brings us back to the bigger picture of what is going on. See, it's one of the last things that Jesus does as a free man is that he goes off and he goes to pray. And the disciples were sleeping. And I'm trying really hard not to be judgmental because I also can't stay up past like 8:30 p.m. at night. And I imagine if it was like the middle of the night, I also would have been doing that thing where you're like, are you sleeping? No, I'm just praying. I'm closing my eyes. Definitely. When I was in college, we would do these 3-day like prayer and fasting retreats. And the expectation was that you were always praying. And I was like, I am, just very quietly. I sometimes snore when I pray. It's fine. Just really channeling the Spirit. But disciplines are hard. They are not easy. If they were easy, we would all be super fit, super in shape. None of us would have debt. We'd all be really healthy, and it would be great. But disciplines, not just like having a discipline, but becoming a disciplined person, takes hard work. See, when I was younger, my mom told me, I'm pretty sure it was my mom, that it only takes 21 days to form a new habit. But then I was reading new science, and it said it's actually not 21 days like we thought originally. It's actually 66 days. And I was like, no wonder I don't ever make it, because I get to 21, and if I'm not good, I'm like, well, we're done here. I tried. But it's 66 days. And studies show that only 8% of New Year's resolutions actually are kept. Those are not good odds. But every year we come back to this tradition of trying to become more disciplined. Because we know that on the other side of discipline is where the fruit comes. It's where those good things come that nourish us, that keep us going. And I mean, yes, like it is great to get out of debt and it is great to lose weight, but like those spiritual disciplines, those things that connect us deeply to the heart of God are what are most important as we head into this new year. See, Galatians 5:22-23 says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. See, the fruit of the Spirit is often a result of discipline that takes time and patience and repetition. It's not like you wake up one day and you're like, now I'm patient. Some people are born patient. Laurel Miller, oh my gosh. If you guys do not know Laurel Miller, she is the most patient woman I have ever met in my entire life. She can have like 3 kids having absolute meltdowns and be helping Derek do something and be packing for a camping trip. And she's just like, that's cool, Blake. Of course you're melting down. No problem. You want a snack? Great. I got it. Like, this woman is a absolute saint when it comes to being patient. I do not have patience like Laurel. Like, I don't have it. Thanks, Dad. But see, Dad, the important thing to remember is this is the thing about fruit. It says that the fruit of the Spirit is that fruit has to ripen. See, you can have an experience that calls for you to become patient in that moment. Like trying to have a baby, or trying to finish school, or trying to raise kids, or get that new job. You can have that moment, but the fruit, the evidence of that practice patience is realized and developed over time. That fruit needs time to ripen. Have you ever tried to eat a fruit that was not yet ripe? Avocados are the worst. I love avocados so much, but it's like a day too early and it's this hard, green, weird, slimy, fibrous thing, and a day too late and it's like black. You're like, what, did I miss the 30-minute window? Like when I could eat this beautiful avocado? So lately, Drew and I have been obsessed with reality survivor shows. We're watching Survivor, don't judge us. We just started. You're like, yeah, that's great. Survivor's been on for like 38 years. We just started. But we were watching Naked and Afraid the other day, and they found some bananas, and they were like super, super green. But they were so hungry, they couldn't wait to eat the fruit. And so they boiled them, and I was really grossed out. I was like, I don't care how hungry you are. Like, that sounds disgusting. And I look at my husband, he's like, yeah, I'd eat it. That sounds good. But Drew and I are very different. Like, my banana has to be like perfectly yellow with just a tinge of green. It can have black spots on it. And Drew's like, I mean, it's food. Like, I'll still eat it. And then it kind of hit me. The reason I don't eat the banana with the black spots is because I'm not on Naked and Afraid. The reason I don't eat the banana with the black spots is because I know that I can just go get another banana. And then I wonder if it's the same in my life with spiritual fruit. I get to a point with something and I go, no, this isn't ready. This is too hard. And I just let it go because I can get another one. I could try something else. I could be disciplined in another area. I don't really need patience. I'll just work on peace. But like the really tricky thing about that is that patience requires peace. Like all of these things work together. You cannot just abandon one discipline for another. You can't just abandon one fruit of the Spirit for another. But this process of ripening, it takes time. And the timing has to be just right. And this is what I was reminded of when I was sitting on the bathroom floor reading Amos 7:14. I am not a prophet, nor am I the son of a prophet, but I'm a herdsman plucking wild figs. See, there's an interesting thing about this verse. Some verses say collecting figs, some say plucking, but the actual Hebrew phrase is bul shikmin, which actually means a piercer of sycamore figs. See, there's this very interesting thing that I learned about Egyptian figs. And Egyptian figs, according to Pliny the Younger, he was an amazing ancient Roman scholar, lawyer and historian, and I read this whole thing that he wrote about these figs. And he said what makes these figs different from any other fig is that in order for the fig to ripen, it actually has to be cut open. And I was sitting there thinking about this fig. And so when Amos says that he is a piercer of figs, what he is actually speaking to is this truth that in order for this fruit to become ripened, it has to go through a very painful process. There has to be this piercing, this cutting, and then 4 days later, this fruit actually ripens after it's cut and after it is pierced. And I think if I'm honest, a lot of the fruit in my life has come as a result of very painful experiences. Moments that did not feel good, that I did not understand. Why is this being cut away? Or why is this hurts? Like this is not what it's supposed to look like. I have these expectations, and my expectation was not that the fruit would ripen in this cutting away process. I thought it would be more like an avocado, and you just put it in a nice little bag and you'd hibernate for a few days, take a nap, and then you come out and you'd be great. But I came to realize the reason I think that God was speaking this verse over and over and over to me was about this idea of these figs. And he's like, the fruit is gonna ripen in the cutting process and in the removing and in that taking away and in all of those things. So we can't avoid those things if we wanna see the fruit. We have to make space, not just for the joy and not just for the victory, but also for the sorrow. And also for the pain, because these are the things that grow us. These are the things that mature us. These are the things that actually draw us back to the feet of Jesus. This fig was a reminder for me of the bigger picture. Sitting alone in the bathroom in my feelings. And I just kept thinking, you're plucking wild figs. You're plucking wild figs. And wouldn't you know, I walk out of the bathroom and I see Katie, my sister-in-law, and she goes, hey, did you know that this week the baby is the size of a fig? And I was like, gosh, you're kidding me. Nope. Ghosts are real. The Holy Ghost, he's speaking to me right now. I was like, you've got to be kidding me, God. Like you gave me this weird verse 3 weeks ago, burned in my heart, couldn't figure it out, sitting here in my grief and my sadness, and you spoke so clearly to me. And then I'm preparing for this talk. And I'm trying to go to Matthew 26, the part where Jesus and his disciples go to pray, and I accidentally turned to Matthew 24. It says, from the fig tree, learn its lesson. And I'm like, no, God, stop talking to me. I'm trying to be sad and in my feelings. It says, from the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near. And this is what I wanted to share with you this morning because, man, God could not have spoken any clearer to me. And I needed that move. I needed to know that God hears me, even when I'm in the bathroom crying, which is scary to think, but gosh, man, he is so present in that moment. When I was in my feelings and in my grief and in my confusion, he was speaking to me so clearly. He's like, this is part of the process. But on the other side, it's so good. And if you could just see it, if you could just get that bigger perspective, if you could just trust me, that even when your grief and your pain and your hurt bump up against your faith with God, man, our faith can be so much bigger. But see, breakthrough doesn't come just from realizing a cool thing about a fig. Breakthrough comes, he says, it's the fruit of the Spirit. And breakthrough comes when the Spirit actually comes. And when the Spirit of God moves, he uses all of those things for his good, for his glory, to bring others closer to him. And so I want to invite you to just stand up. And this is the part I warned you about. If you're here, I believe that God is speaking to you the same way that he is speaking to me. And maybe you're sitting here and you're like, man, I hear it. I hear him saying hey, John, this is for you. Jessica, this is for you. Jeff, like, I am speaking to you this morning. See, what I love about scriptures over and over and over, before there was like this moment of the release of the Spirit, before there was this moment of breakthrough, God asked people to do something. He said, Moses, this is holy ground, take off your shoes. Before he called Peter onto the water and Peter was able to walk on the water, he had to get out of the boat. And so my prayer for you is, if you're here this morning and you just go, I need to hear God that clearly. Like, I need a reminder of his goodness and his faithfulness, whether you're in a cutting season, whether you're in a season of fruit, whether you're in a season where everything around you seems to be unripe and not going the way that you want, if you have all these unmet expectations, maybe it's of yourself, maybe it's of God, it doesn't matter. What I would like for us to do this morning is to have a time of prayer together and to be in it together. So the prayer team's gonna come to the front and we're gonna sing this song together one last time, and I don't want you to miss it. If you are here and you need prayer for anything, if you have unmet expectations, if you have hurt, if you have pain, if you have confusion about how God is moving and working in your life, or if you don't see God moving or working in the way that you had hoped or imagined, I want to encourage you to come down for prayer this morning. And if everybody would close your eyes with me right now, I'm going to pray us out. God, I believe, Lord, that you are moving in this space right now. God, I believe that you are stirring our hearts. Lord, and for every person who is sitting here who just feels you tugging on them, God, I pray that this would be that move that they need, that this would be that moment of awakening that they need, God, that this would be that moment of healing that they need. But God, we know that it happens in a moment, but it's going to be built up over time. I pray against the spirit of discouragement. I pray against the spirit of fear. God, I pray against the spirit of self-consciousness. I pray against the spirit of anxiety. God, I specifically pray against the spirit of distrust. Lord, for people who have been so hurt by the church, God, who don't feel like they can trust the church, God, I know that we can trust you, and I pray that in this space, Lord, that those spirits would quiet, God, that we would only hear your voice. God, I pray that as we sing this song, Lord, that just chains would be loosed. God, that mountains would be moved. God, that every stronghold that comes up against you and your word, Lord, and your promises would fall to the wayside. God, give us the courage to step out in faith. God, give us the courage to ask for a move of your spirit. Give us the courage to pray bold prayers that we've never thought. God, we are thankful that you can do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine. God, we invite your spirit here this morning. We invite your spirit here this morning. God, we invite you to come into this space. As we sing this song, I just want you to come to the front. If you need prayer, our team is up here, and I will be at the front, and we would love to pray with you. Don't miss this opportunity. God, we invite your spirit here this morning.
Miracles happen when you move.
You are listening to the Makers Church podcast. For more information about our community, please visit makerschurch.org.